In October 2007, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were two designers living in San Francisco who couldn't pay their rent. A design conference was coming to town, hotels were fully booked, and they had floor space. So they bought 3 air mattresses, built a rudimentary website in a weekend, and advertised a place to sleep and a home-cooked breakfast to conference attendees. They got 3 guests, a 30-year-old from Utah, a 35-year-old from Boston, and a 45-year-old father of 4 from India. Each paid $80 a night. Chesky and Gebbia made enough to cover their rent. The concept worked in a way they hadn't quite expected. The guests didn't just sleep there. They had conversations. They got local recommendations. They experienced San Francisco the way a resident would rather than the way a tourist does. Or that observation, that staying in a stranger's home could be genuinely better than a hotel, became the foundation of a company that would eventually be valued at over $75 billion. Chesky and Gebbia brought in a third co-founder, Nathan Blecharczyk, a technical engineer who built out the platform. The early months were defined by rejection. The idea seemed obviously flawed to almost everyone they pitched. Who would let a stranger sleep in their home? Who would sleep in a stranger's home? The concept felt unsafe, uncomfortable, and fundamentally unscalable. When Paul Graham at Y Combinator, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious startup accelerators, first heard the pitch, he reportedly asked why anyone would do this. The founders had a specific answer. It wasn't really about the transaction. It was about the experience. Hotels are anonymous. They are optimized for efficiency and consistency, not for authenticity or connection. Staying in someone's home gave travelers something hotels structurally couldn't provide: the feeling of actually being somewhere rather than passing through it. Y Combinator accepted them in 2009, but the company was still struggling. Listings in New York, their most important early market, weren't converting. Chesky flew to New York, met with hosts, and identified the problem immediately. The photographs were terrible. Dark, blurry pictures taken on old phones. Nobody would book a place that looked uninviting. So Chesky and Gebbia rented a camera and personally went door-to-door photographing apartments in New York. And this was not scalable. 2 founders physically photographing listings was not a long-term business strategy. But it proved the concept. Better photographs led to dramatically higher booking rates. The product worked when it was presented well. That insight eventually became a professional photography program that Airbnb deployed globally. The lesson embedded in that story, go to your users, see what they actually experience, fix the specific thing that's broken, became a cultural principle at Airbnb that shaped how the company operated for years. The core innovation of Airbnb was not the website or the app. It was the trust system. 2 people who have never met agreeing to share a physical space is, from a pure risk perspective, a frightening transaction. Airbnb's job was to make that transaction feel safe. They built 2-sided reviews: hosts rate guests, guests rate hosts, creating a reputation system with real stakes. They introduced identity verification. They held payments in escrow and released them to hosts only after check-in, protecting guests from fraud. They created a $1 million host guarantee to cover property damage. They studied how eBay had solved the same problem in the 1990s. How do you make a stranger trust another stranger enough to hand them money? And adapted the solutions for physical spaces. Every one of these mechanisms served a single purpose: to lower the psychological activation energy required to make a frightening transaction feel ordinary. The hotel industry's initial response was dismissal. By 2012, the response had shifted to lobbying. The city governments around the world began regulating short-term rentals, some requiring licenses, some imposing strict limits on the number of nights per year a property could be rented, some banning the practice outright. New York, San Francisco, Barcelona, Amsterdam, and Paris all passed restrictive legislation. Airbnb's response was to treat each city as a separate political environment and engage accordingly, sometimes complying, sometimes fighting, sometimes negotiating. The regulatory complexity became one of the most challenging aspects of managing the company. It also raised a genuine ethical question that Airbnb has never fully resolved. In cities with severe housing shortages, does converting residential apartments to short-term rentals make housing less affordable for long-term residents? The company disputes this framing. Critics and many urban planners disagree. The debate continues. Airbnb's founding story contains a lesson that applies well beyond the hospitality industry. The best business ideas frequently look obviously wrong on first inspection. A company built on letting strangers sleep in each other's homes sounded absurd in 2008. The founders succeeded not by having a perfect plan, but by responding obsessively to what their earliest users actually needed. better photographs, better trust mechanisms, better communication tools. They didn't build Airbnb by imagining what a billion-dollar company would look like. They built it by asking what would make their 3 air mattress guests feel comfortable enough to come back and tell their friends. The scale followed from solving the small problem extraordinarily well.